Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this important moment of reflection. I am Menos Mastroianni, known for the Mediterranean Senior Deputy Secretary General, and I am the moderator. Since we will run on a very precise schedule, we really have to wrap up at 2 p.m. in Glasgow. My role will basically be timekeeper to ensure that everybody has a chance to speak. So without further ado, I would pass the floor to the first introductory intervention by His Excellency, the Minister of Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment of Cyprus, Mr. Konstantinos Kadis. The floor is yours, Mr. Minister.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know if we can have the presentation. Can we have the presentation, please, on the screen? Okay. I thank all of you for being here today. I would like to thank the organizers of this side event and all the people who contributed to the preparation of this event, which provides us the opportunity to present the initiative of the government of Cyprus for coordinating climate change actions in the Eastern Mediterranean and Middle East. Next slide, please. An area which has been classified by the scientific community as a global climate change hotspot. Actually, we are already witnessing the impacts of climate change in our region, prolonged periods of drought, increased temperature, decreased precipitation, extreme weather phenomena, and all these phenomena have negative effects on the well-being of our society and on our natural ecosystems. Can I have this next slide, please? So all the countries of the area have outlined their concern about this situation and expressed their willingness to comply with the Paris Agreement. However, there is a lack. The efforts of the countries are held back by the lack of detailed environmental observations and modeling, which are necessary for developing accurate predictions, mitigation and adaptation strategies to climate change, and coordinated policy actions, common projects and collaboration, and sharing of good practices in the area of addressing climate change. Next slide, please. The previous one. So these gaps were discussed in an international conference on climate change in the Mediterranean and Middle East, which was organized by the Cyprus Institute in May 2028. The Cyprus Institute is a leading institution in the area of climate change. And the main message from that event, which attracted policymakers and scientists from more than 30 countries, the main message was that coordinated action and collaboration, regional collaboration based on sound scientific knowledge is necessary in order to address the specific challenges relating to climate change in our area. So this message was well received by our president, Mr. Nikos Anastasiadis, who expressed his vision for Cyprus to undertake an international initiative. Can I have this next slide, please? And bring together the countries of the area, aiming at developing an action plan to address the specific challenges of the countries in the region and to ameliorate the impacts of climate change through scientifically sound mitigation actions in accordance with the Paris Agreement. Can I have the next slide? This is how our initiative is structured, and describes the philosophy of our initiative. Our initiative intends to bring together the scientific community with the policymakers. So the scientific community carries out the scientific work and all the preparatory work and provides sound scientific base for the policymakers in order to develop the appropriate measures. Can I have the next slide, please? Within the framework of the scientific part of the initiative, 13 task forces were established, engaging more than 240 scientists, mostly from the region, but also from other countries and international organizations. This work was coordinated by the Cyprus Institute and Professor Papanikolas. I'm sure that Professor Papanikolas later on will provide more information about the scientific component of the initiative. Can I have the next slide, please? These are the 13 task forces that have been established, and they worked for more than 2 years, and they provided their suggestions. Can I have the next slide? Their advanced thematic reports and their recommendations were presented in a second international conference on climate change in the Eastern Mediterranean and Middle East. It was a very successful conference that took place in October in Cyprus. And really the presentations were alarming, but at the same time very useful for our next steps. And which are the next steps? Can I have the next slide? Receiving all this input from the scientific community, we, the policymakers, will develop an action plan. The action plan will be actually a toolkit composed of measures that are suitable for our region, that are applicable, economically feasible, and they will be measures that are they will not be compulsory, but each country can select the most appropriate for the country. So these are the key meeting dates and milestones. We are at number 5, the presentation of the initiative at COP26 here. The next step will be a ministerial meeting for the finalization of the regional action plan. And then the action plan will be ratified on a regional leaders summit that will take place the beginning of autumn. Of course, the action plan will also include the coordination and monitoring mechanism of the initiative, as well as funding mechanisms for the measures that will be included in the action plan. So, next slide, please. The initiative has secured a lot of support from heads of state, from the European Commission, from the Union of the Mediterranean, from the FAO, from the World Meteorological Organization, and from leaders in the area of climate change, like Laurent Fabius, Jeffrey Sachs, other very well-known personalities in the area of climate change. Concluding, can I have the last slide, please? The message that we want to send through our initiative is that we need to act collectively, we need to act decisively, and based on sound scientific knowledge, and if we do so, we can avoid the consequences of climate change in our region. Otherwise, we and the next generations we will live with the consequences of climate change in our region. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, also for respecting so rigorously your time slot. Let me just take this opportunity to announce that we are willing to contribute to this effort as UFM, also as we signed last week an MOU with Copernicus European Satellite System to provide the whole region with homogeneous and science-based data. It is now my honor to introduce the second intervention on behalf of the UFM co-presidency, His Excellency, the Jordanian Minister of the Environment, and I hope I do not mispronounce his name, Muawiye Khalid Radaide. Mr. Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Actually, I am sorry to inform you that the Minister couldn't attend this important event, so I am his advisor. So I am representing him in this event, representing the Jordanian UFM co-presidency. Thank you. So first of all, please allow me to extend my appreciation to the organizers of this event related to climate action in the Mediterranean, and thanks to all participants. Almost 4 weeks ago, the Ministers of Environment of the Union for the Mediterranean met in Cairo and adopted the second declaration on environment and climate action, which lays the ground for action and forms a main element of cooperation between our countries towards addressing environmental and climate challenges that our region faces. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, the Mediterranean basin was shown to be an environmental and climatic hotspot, as was indicated by the first Mediterranean Assessment Report prepared by the Mediterranean Committee on Environment and Climate Change, MEDIC, whereby the region warms 20% faster than the globe, calling for all of us to act in a fast and decisive manner, as His Excellency mentioned right now. The adoption of the second declaration on environment and climate action comes at the right time, so to set ambitious goals and actions needed to address our fast growing climate and environmental challenges, which in turn contributes into fulfilling our global commitments and our national goals as well. Our continued and consolidated cooperation under the UFM umbrella being an excellent cooperation platform, so it's important for action. Here, please allow me to quote what His Majesty King Abdullah II of Jordan mentioned, referring to climate action during the UN Assembly meeting held last September. I quote, "No country can combat climate change on its own, and that is a powerful reminder of the need to develop new ways to respond as one world, one humanity, to all the crises and challenges we face. But every country has strengths and capabilities to offer. Every region has capacities to speed forward the larger global response. And every international body has powers to contribute, to guide, to reinforce, and to coordinate global action. Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen, it's important that we set the right mechanisms for action, building on what we already have achieved so far in terms of working groups, committees, initiatives like this important initiative from the government of Cyprus. As for Jordan, we have recently submitted our updated national determined contributions to the UNFCCC, raising our ambition of greenhouse gases reduction to more than doubling our previously committed value of 14%. We also developed our Green Growth National Action Plan that covers 6 sectors: agriculture, energy, waste, water, tourism, and transport. The plan actually includes 86 actions that are either green growth environment enabling actions or investment opportunities that contribute together to our indices and adaptation plans into achieving our global, regional, and national goals. It is important to mainstream green growth, climate change, and sustainable development into sectorial planning and implementation frameworks. The quality of economic growth is important. And here we talk about green growth that is environmentally sustainable and socially inclusive, reducing poverty and unemployment. Finally, please allow me to thank you again, wishing all of us a successful and fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. We couldn't hear the minister, but I had the pleasure of seeing now a long-time good friend. Thank you for showing the way. And about showing the way, we have an unforeseen speaker, the honor of having representing the example and the motivation given by Solar Impulse, Mr. Bernard Picard. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, my role at the COP is to remind everyone that the protection of the environment has become financially profitable. And why is it so important? Because for a long time, the negotiators in all the climate conferences had to take into consideration the interest of their countries, which meant that for a lot of countries, the climate change action was a threat for their economy, for their industry, for their advantages. And today, there has been such a huge technological evolution that it's not the case anymore. Now, you want me to go here, okay. But the words will be the same. Now, thanks to the evolution of technology, science, and industry, there are a lot of profitable business opportunities that have come in the action for climate. We have proven this with the Solar Impulse Foundation by identifying everywhere in the world more than 1,000 solutions, systems, projects, sources of energy to protect the environment, but at the same time to create jobs and to make industrial profit. And I think this message is really important because today it is exactly the opposite as before. Today, if we want the economy to grow, we need to use ecology as the driving force. Because what is mainly fighting climate change? It's about becoming more efficient in resources and efficient in energy. There are a lot of technologies that have to be implemented, a lot of infrastructures that have to be modernized to reach this goal. Another part is about renewable energies. The price of electricity produced by renewable energy is today lower than any other source of energy. It's about circular economy, which means using the resources in a more logical way, more common sense, but also running the waste management in a more profitable way. This is an industrial opportunity. So when we look at all the things that have changed today, I believe that we have a language that can motivate climate change deniers, that can motivate the people who don't care about the environment to do something because it has become the most profitable way to do business. So today we have a complete change in paradigm. Instead of creating wealth and having a GDP that is based and coupled with the quantity of the consumption and the quantity of the waste, we can couple the creation of wealth to the quality of the efficiency, the quality of the solutions that protect the environment. And because replacing everything that pollutes by what protects the environment has become now profitable, I think we can reconcile ecology and economy. And the main message for that is that we have to be ambitious in the national determined contributions because there is no way no reason to hold back. The more we will commit, the more we will go into the reduction of CO2, the more the economy will grow, but based on the quality of the efficiency. And that's a game changer. So for everyone, you know, we work at the Solar Impulse Foundation just as a provider of solutions that have been identified everywhere in the world. So just go, take them. They are open source. It's for free. It's non-for-profit. They are just there to be used, 1,300 of them. It's organized in a solutions explorers form. So you ask the problem you want to solve, and you get the solutions. So this is, I believe, the message that we have to spread. Before we're speaking of problems, today we can speak of solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Picard. When the pandemics arrived right after the announcement of the Green New Deal by the European Commission, we all remember the article you co-signed with Vice President Timmermans, in which basically to those saying that now there are new emergencies and we cannot devote to the environment, you replied that if you want health, you need green economy. If you want growth, you need green economy. I think this was an essential step. Thank you so much for that. And now, again, on behalf of the co-presidency of the European Commission, Mrs. Silvia Crescimbeni, the floor is yours, Silvia.
Thank you very much, Menos. We have just heard important policy developments in Cyprus and Jordan and a very inspiring vision by Bertrand Piccard. This is really very promising, and I guess we can fully subscribe to this vision. Ladies and gentlemen, our leaders have a very important task ahead of them for the next 2 weeks, bringing the world back on track of sustainability and prosperity for all. And science is very clear about that. Science is telling us that this is urgent, especially in the Mediterranean, but we're not on track yet right now. We can do something about it and succeed if we can act together to build more inclusive and resilient societies for the health and well-being of our citizens. Countries around the Mediterranean are natural partners in this endeavor, and we all have clear common interest in taking action now. Because the impact of the climate crisis in the Mediterranean is particularly bad and is getting worse, but also because the green transition in Europe will open new opportunities for sustainable growth, enhance resilience, and improve security in the region. We've just heard it now. The Green Deal is Europe's growth strategy, but is also an opportunity to engage with our neighbors to help them build back better. There is an enormous potential in the southern Mediterranean to establish new sustainable growth models based on renewable energy. Mr. Picard was just mentioning it now. There is much more if we start looking at the growing demand for green products and the opportunities that these can create in terms of investments in green technologies, products, services, and the development of integrated green value chains across the Mediterranean. In the years ahead, we are determined to continue scaling up our support and accompany our partners in their efforts to boost climate action, drive the energy transition, protect environmental assets and biodiversity, and promote circular economy. From our side, we will work as Team Europe, pooling expertise, networks, capacity, and resources from the UN member states and the European financial institutions. Through the new agenda for the Mediterranean, €7 billion economic and investment plan, we will have important instruments to make this happen and stimulate the economies in the right direction. Ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude. We have an opportunity here to make smart, coordinated decisions, ones that can catalyze green investment, to jumpstart the recovery and decrease the likelihood and impact of a climate catastrophe. And we need to work at all levels to advocate for the right policies, right reforms, right investments. This is why we need to join forces, because climate change is a threat that transcends geographic, sectoral, and temporal boundaries. The Union for the Mediterranean, with the engagement of all its members, has historically played a key role in facilitating this process in the region. The outcomes of the UFM Ministerial Conference of last October, as mentioned by Dr. Jihad previously, are an important milestone. We're very keen to continue supporting this joint endeavor altogether. And from our side, again, we are ready to do our part and engage with all our partners in the Mediterranean to help them reap all the benefits from investing into the transition towards a resilient, inclusive, and climate-neutral future. Let's work together to make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sylvia, and thank you everyone for being so disciplined in respecting your time slots. Well, we're talking about the Mediterranean. We've talked about climate change, a severe threat, but what is this exactly about? Let us ask to science. So let me give the floor, representing the network of Mediterranean scientists called the MEDEC, to Dr. Fatima Driouech. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Kremenos. Can we see the slides, please? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So first of all, I would like to recall that the MED-ECC is a voluntary and independent international scientific network. Slide 2, please. This network includes about 700 scientists from 35 countries, with the objective of providing assessment of the risks associated with climate and environmental changes in the Mediterranean. We know that climate change is a threat, but also other environmental changes in the region, and then contribute to reinforcing the science policy society nexus for an improved environmental and climate change and climate governance in the region. In November 2020, the MED-ECC has published the first Mediterranean Assessment Report, MAR1, the first in its kind, which has been prepared by 190 authors and benefited from a large and transparent review by experts and stakeholders. And MAR1 won the North-South Prize 2020 of the Council of Europe and has been acknowledged by the second ministerial session of the Union for the Mediterranean. I would like to say that several MED-ECC members are also contributing to the IPCC sixth assessment cycle. And the overall message of MAR1, which we see in slide 3, next slide, is that virtually all subregions of the Mediterranean basin on land and in sea are impacted by recent anthropogenic changes in the environment, affecting both natural and human systems. These are driven by climate change, air and sea pollution, land management, and non-indigenous species. And as we can see in the next slide, the Mediterranean region is warming, and the annual mean temperature is already 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial level. And the situation is expected to worsen, especially in the case of insufficient global climate action. The warming, as we can see in the graphics, the warming would be from 1 to more than 6 times depending on the future emissions. And the changes concerns other aspects of the climate system, including precipitation characteristics that we can see in the next slide. And it is projected, the precipitation are projected to register a decrease in seasonal total amounts, reaching 20 to 50% in winter, mainly in the south, and 10 to 30% reduction in summer. And we can imagine the impacts in the several socio-economic sectors in the region. Another climatic driver, which we can see in slide 6, is the sea level change, with projections of increase. They may reach or even exceed 80 centimeters to 1 meter under high scenario emissions. And here also we can see that the intensity of the increase of the change depends on emissions. And we know also that the repercussions depend also on adaptation and risk resilience. In the next slide, we can see that the climatic and environmental changes would lead to several risks and impacts on agriculture, water resources, marine and terrestrial ecosystems, as well as human health. And expected consequences include, among others, runoff reduction, water quality degradation, increase in ecosystem degradation, salt intrusion, and also increase in terms of demand for irrigation to ensure food security. Several risks for marine ecosystems are listed in the next slide. They include, for example, a reduction of commercial fish stocks. Marine ecosystems, please, the slide 8. They include reduction of commercial fish stocks and fish size, for example, as well as increase in hypoxis areas. Risks on terrestrial ecosystems in the next slide include loss of wetland areas and dryland extension, as well as increase in areas burned during increasing wildfires. And as shown in the next slide, human health is also concerned by impacts, and it is expected to be negatively impacted through direct or indirect exposure through extreme events, air pollution, food storage, among others. The report also assessed energy and carbon-related aspects, as we can see in the slide, and highlighted that the current made greenhouse gas emissions are about 6% of the total emissions. Sure, with the difference between the north and the south, and that there are several challenges for energy, including development needs and lag in energy transition. And we have heard about the opportunities that we have in terms of renewable energy in the region. The report includes more results and details. And as we can see in the next slide, the MED-SCC will prepare other assessment reports that are listed here. In fact, during Marwan preparation, several important issues have emerged that require deeper analysis, often associated with the appearance of new scientific studies. And it is also expected to prepare a second assessment report for the region. The MED-SCC is also targeting more institutionalized and perennial base, while maintaining the scientific independence of its authors, which is a basis for a solid knowledge, with the main commitments of contributing to the improvement of policies that ensure the well-being not only for the current generation, but also for the future generations in the region. Thank you.
And thank you, Professor. Thank you for your illustration of the situation. And we continue with science, this time leading by example and testifying about the crucial initiative by Cyprus, Professor Kostas Papanikolas. The floor is yours, Professor.
May I have the presentation, please? I'll present here mostly the scientific findings part of the initiative that already Minister Cadiz presented, although I'll embed it in the overall context. The crucial aspect of this initiative, as already highlighted, is that the initiative is ab initio embedded in sound, scientific, technological, and techno-economic analysis. So the plan that will be in the future adopted is already vetted scientifically, technologically, and in terms of financial costs. Next, please. The region is the Eastern Mediterranean Middle East region, shown in the map, is recognized now internationally as a hotspot. Impacts such as the ones we heard from the previous speaker will manifest themselves in the most intense, possibly really catastrophic way in a geopolitical sensitive area. This area is not known for lack of trouble, and a very populous region. This population is about 450 million, comparable to the European Union. In terms of emissions, I give the 3.8 gigaton equivalent of CO2 to make it relevant, is per capita, as I'll show in a minute, and about, since they have the same population, the same as EU. The bad news, it's growing, while EU, rightly so, is declining. Next. Here, actually, the emissions from the main contributors. And you see the greenhouse emissions, as I said, from this region, the Eastern Mediterranean, Middle East, are on the increase, comparable now, almost identical to those of the European Union, and per capita has already exceeded the European Union. Next. This already has been shown. It's a result from the Cyprus Institute, actually, modeling team. We have the most detailed modeling of the area. And let me expand a little bit on it. It was already shown. It's a very robust prediction. What does it mean, robust? The parenthesis in the business as usual or the Paris scenario, I won't use the technical terms, 23 and 20 is 23 different models have been used to generate this curve, or 20 is not a single model that you can find another model that disagree. All models agree. The red line is the blue line is the average. The band shows the difference between the 23 or so models. So it's a very robust, as we call it scientifically, finding. It's as solid as one can expect in modeling of climate. So, take away home message, business as usual is a catastrophe. I hate to use cliches. Scientists were very conservative in our language, and maybe that's a problem when we come to say the results for climate, because unless somebody's certain 99% doesn't present the result, we can't afford that accuracy, although this is as accurate. If we do nothing, the average increase will be 5 degrees. What that means, nobody exactly knows, but everybody knows is beyond comprehension what will happen. Even if we today stop emissions, or if we follow the Paris scenario, the area, specific areas in the region will exceed 2 degrees. That's why it's a hotspot. Not every region on the planet will increase by 1.5. Some will increase more. The Arctic, for example, will increase tremendously more, and so on. So, but also the Middle East. And already highlighted, rainfall will diminish by 30 to 40%, which will be in a water-starved area, real disaster. Next. Also, we have calculated how the temperature profiles will vary with time. And by the end of the century, to make it simple, the coolest nights or days by the end of the century in this region will be what we have now as the hottest days and nights in the region. So the extremes of today in the hot area will be the coolest by the end of the century, which of course you understand again what it means. Next. So the climate initiative, I'm very glad that the Cyprus government and the president heeded the call of the international community. It's time for the governments of the region to do something about it, work together. There are solutions already. I'm very glad Dr. Picard highlighted that. There are technical solutions well accepted by the scientific community, vetted, and financially affordable. But there is a lot of duplication. There is a lot of effectiveness that can be reached by coordinating actions in the region. And this is the whole spirit of the initiative already explained. Accelerate adherence mitigation to Paris Agreement. As you have said, it's increasing. So dropping the emissions is very important, and ameliorate the effects. Next. This has been explained. We are in November 2021, and the only difference from the same transparency shown by the minister is pointing out that all the preliminary work during the last 2 years has been mostly completed. Of course, it's not a switch. It will continue as demands and explanations will be needed by the policymakers, but we have readied a toolkit that means many solutions to different problems that are scientifically and technologically, as I said, valid. And from this toolkit, it's up now to the governments of the region to pick those that suit their priorities, their policies, the idiosyncrasies of each country to gain the efficiency of concerted action. Next. Already, I said we had 240 scientists working in 13 thematic task forces. I showed some result actually from Task Force 1. The graphs I showed before are in the report of the physical basis for the regional climate change. We have energy, built environment, all the way to cultural heritage. And of course, this area, Eastern Mediterranean, Middle East, is one of the cradles of civilization. And this is world cultural heritage. And this is at great risk, actually, because of climate change. Next. The mandate has been explained by the minister. I will not repeat it. But following that mandate, we produced the thematic reports, the white papers, 13 in all. And we have organized recommendations in this toolkit. So we had over 200 recommendations in terms of policy. So they need to be organized in put in a hierarchy to allow the policymakers to really proceed to implementation. Next. It was a truly international participation. You see all countries of the region, international organizations participated. Out of these 240 scientists, 3/4 were from the area. The quarter were international experts from everywhere. Next. We had discussed this in 15 days ago in this conference in Cyprus, where these results were presented, debated among scientists and policymakers. You see here many personalities that have been supporting the initiative all along, from Laurent Fabius to the Commissioner for Environment, to Peter Talas, WMO, Jeffrey Sachs, the President of the Republic, and Prince Hassan of Jordan, of course. Next. The findings are simple. It's bad and it's getting worse by the day. No time to wait. Actually, it's already too late, in my view. Unless we do something, though, the really bad effects that will manifest themselves, regardless of what we do from now on, if we do nothing, will be real collapse. No adaptation will be possible if we do the business as usual, and let's say in 2050 say, hey, it's about time we do something. We found that there is yet inadequate specific quality data that is needed to refine and to make even more economical the planning. There is low level of national and regional funding for climate research. Resources have to be pooled. It doesn't make sense to model every country its own region. The whole region has to be modeled together, and likewise solutions like grids have to be transnational. Rivers don't respect boundaries when it comes to lack of water, etc., etc. It's obvious. There is insufficient utilization of digitalization and remote sensing and other enabling technologies. We're working with Copernicus and other regions to do that. Therefore, regional collaboration, which is anemic, has to move. Next. It's all bunched in, as I said, in 6 thrusts: research, observation, biodiversity, climate services, innovation, education, and outreach. Next. Next. And the implementation phase has been discussed by the minister. I will not repeat here. We have to respect the time limits. This has been explained already, but it's urgent that we move fast and in very, very committed ways from the countries and the international organizations. Next. Already said the next milestones, and with that, I believe we will conclude. Next is the conclusion, I believe. Thank you very much.
So, Professor, thank you very much. We know the situation, we know the challenges, we need to act. Solutions are there in the real world in terms of technology and economy, but all this has to be mobilized and remunerated. To this end, we now hear the words of Mr. Vanni Puccione, representing ClimaMed. Mr. Puccione, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I am speaking on behalf of the ClimaMed project, which is a European Union-funded project in the Mashrek Maghreb, and which mainly has produced over 100 plans for sustainable energy action and climate action for the local governments in the Mashrek Maghreb with 100 cities. The difficulty, the challenge that we are meeting today is the challenge of implementing these actions. We have over 1,000 climate actions that have been identified, and we are facing the challenge of finding the money. Can I have my, oh yes, can I have my slides, please? In order to implement these actions. The starting point is that, first of all, let me say that this presentation has been prepared by myself as an expert of ClimaMed, and does not necessarily reflect the official positions of the European Union. Now, the challenge that we are meeting is that there exists a huge gap in the financing of climate action as regards the medium-sized and small cities, especially in developing countries. And this gap is such that unless something changes in the way in which climate financing is tackled, we will fall very short of the Paris Agreement target. We have to consider that cities represent over 70% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. Well, so what is ClimaMed aiming at now? We are aiming at fulfilling, next please. We are aiming at filling this gap and focusing on improving the tools that exist, the diffusion of best practices, and first of all, acting by improving the existing instruments, and secondly, by looking at new innovative ways to finance climate action at this level. So what are the critical factors that have produced this gap? Next, please. They are, of course, first of all, related to the size of the interventions, the climate actions. We know that donors prefer larger investments than the ones that are to be implemented at the level we are talking about. There are national circumstances. There is the issue of creditworthiness of local governments, which is an obstacle when we are looking at public-private partnerships. Local legislation, repayment of loans, technical factors, security, climate risks, and external factors. Next, please. What are we looking for when we talk of innovation in project financing? First of all, a faster access to finance through streamlined procedures. Typically, a project requires between 3 or 4 years from the moment it is identified to the moment when we start to have tangible climate results in the field. And this is too long. 2030 is just behind the corner. And at this rate, we will not be able to meet the Paris target. Then we look at leveraging of untapped resources. And this is something that I will speak of in more detail at the end of this presentation. Wider participation of the public is another important factor. Support to technical innovations, because typically action at the local level is an excellent ground to diffuse innovative processes, especially as regards technologies which are on the more simple level of difficulty for implementation. Then we look at supporting women and the youth generation in their initiatives. And finally, we look at instruments to operate in crisis conditions, such as the one that we are presently facing in Lebanon. Next, please. So I will now present some examples of conventional or nearly conventional instruments that are best practices and should be diffused and more frequently implemented. An excellent example is the Subnational Climate Fund Global of the Green Climate Fund. This instrument is designed especially to fill the gap that I have mentioned before, to finance action at the local level. It allows bypassing of the difficulties we have mentioned concerning the local governments. It is faster and more direct than funding through national intermediaries because there are less layers of decision-making, which, of course, at each time carry their own complications and longer delays. How does this system work? It operates as a blind fund, which means that the management has a pool of money and it can decide on which project to finance and proceed according to priorities. It can address special situations with flexibility. The instrument also guarantees quality through its implementer, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, and quality assurance by Gold Standard Foundation. And therefore, it is able to unlock capital commitments by the private sector. The special characteristics of this fund.
Mr. Puccione.
Sorry?
Mr. Puccione, I'm really sorry to remind of time limits. We need to leave the space to other events. You still have 2 minutes.
Oh my God. Okay, well, let me go as fast as I can. Anyway, this PowerPoint presentation will be available. I will therefore go more directly to the, there is an instrument of guarantees. You will find the details in the presentation, which have been developed by the European Union and the World Bank. And finally, I would especially mention two types of intervention that are out of the box and that, according to a World Bank recent study, have a special possibility of developing in the present circumstances after the COVID emergency, and because of the special awareness of the public on the climate emergency. These examples are crowdfunding for municipal projects and the Jasper Bonds. Crowdfunding is an instrument by which small investors can participate and invest in climate action. The contributions can be as small as 100 euros. And this system is able to mobilize and involve the public at a large scale. Crowdfunding is proving to be a success. If you look at the Citizens for Energy portal of the European Union, you will find 64 examples of projects that have been successfully funded, ranging in size from 6 million to 113 euros only. And they have been implemented in such diverse countries as Kenya, Zambia, Senegal, Ghana, and so on. And also, of course, in European Union member states. We, as ClimaMed, have a success story in a project in Lebanon, which is called CIDRO 5. And here, in a circumstance where nothing is working, the banks have great difficulties, there is a political crisis, still, it has been able to address and is able to circumvent these difficulties. So it is an important instrument that we should be mobilizing. The second example, next please, is the Jasper Bonds. The Jasper remittances are over 500 billion US dollars per year, and they are comparable in size to direct foreign investment. Jasper Bonds have special characteristics because they are able to be a win-win instrument in which the beneficiary, the government that issues these bonds or the authority that issues these bonds is able to obtain a loan, money at a lower rate than the market rate. But it is also profitable from the point of view of the investor because the Jasper obtains better interest rates than it would in hard currency investments in its own country, not in its own country, in the country of residence. Jasper Bonds. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Puccione, for introducing these tools, which are really not the ones that we normally consider, but they are extremely useful. I'm really obliged to bring this event to a conclusion. Thank you very much for these reflections, which are absolutely strategic. The material, not only this, will be made available through various channels. I wish to thank all the speakers. No time for Q&A, but I think it was a worth price to pay to have the honor and pleasure of listening to an unpreviewed speaker, Mr. Picard. To conclude, I think that of all this, just one thing is clear to all of us, but is fundamental. And let me requote the quoted words of His Majesty, the King of Jordan. In face of climate change in the Mediterranean, no one can make it on its own without counting on the others. If you ask what is the UFM, the Union for the Mediterranean strategy about climate change as mandated by members and by the co-presidency, well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the strategy. Nobody can make it on its own. We have to unite forces. So thank you so much to the speakers. Thank you for listening to this panel. It's now the time to ask for your help. Spread the word. We all need each other. Climate change makes us one. Thank you. Vanni mi sente?
Sì?
Ecco, mi scuso davvero, ma non potevo fare altrimenti. Quando ho detto 15 minuti le ho scritto, purtroppo